Call to order the Planning Commission meeting for January 16th. If you call the roll.
Baldwin.
Here.
Patrick.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Carr.
Here.
Lachey.
Here.
And Marino.
Here. We need to approve the agenda. We have two old business items. They're open public meetings. And then we have three new business items for site plan review and election of officers. Can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Third. Voice votes. What do I say? All in favor, say aye.
There you go.
Aye. Aye. Approval of the minutes. Everybody had a chance to read the minutes. Any questions? Approval of the minutes? Make a
Commissioner
motion.
Bazarek, I make a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting, December 19th, 2024.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This is the public comment section. You've come to the podium from the audience, state your name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to make any comments on items on the agenda. There are, for the open meeting minutes, the public meetings, there's opportunities to speak later. So it's opportunity now, and then again at that, if you'd like to speak. Seeing no one in the audience, and I see no one online either. I see Steve. I'm just seeing if he wanted to comment now or later.
You unmute yourself, Steve?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So you're hearing me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so if it's public comment, I just wanted to first to say how much I am disappointed, that I did not make this meeting. As many of you are aware, as chair, I think it very important to be there for each one. However, I am currently at the American Express golf outing out in La Quinta. I know a terrible place to be, but I'm on the host committee and volunteer. But tonight I wanted to welcome Craig to his first meeting and say good luck. And we're really happy to have him as part of the team. And I have gone over the agenda with Luke, and we've also talked it over with CJ. I think it's pretty straightforward tonight. Some questions in regards to, this guest dwelling unit that we may want to continue to kind of look at, and whether or not we feel comfortable making decisions today or waiting, till a future month with another postponement will kind of be up to each of you. But overall, I feel very positive, and hopefully you'll have a great meeting. And again, I apologize that I can't be there, but we will be back for the February. With that, I wish you all a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments in the audience or online? Seeing none. Moving to old business, we have the bed and breakfast accessory structures. Luke, because we have a new member with Craig, can you let us, because that's a continuing public meeting, can you tell us where we're at in that process and give us a little update?
Yeah, thank you. It's part of an ongoing effort to evaluate and potentially update some zoning regulations in the R4 CER district. Chris Corey of McKenna has conducted an in-depth analysis of all properties within the district, which explores a couple of key considerations, including whether bed and breakfast establishments would be permitted on certain lots, whether existing accessory buildings could be used for guest rooms, and if new accessory buildings could be used to accommodate the proposed accessory guest rooms. The analysis was included in your packets, and we do have Chris in front of us tonight as well to go over what he provided.
So we'll let him come up and speak to anything he wants to add to his report.
Absolutely.
Good evening, everyone.
Yeah, I think it's.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this tonight. You have in front of you our analysis of the potential impacts of this amendment on other properties, beyond Wickwood Inn. And just a couple of notes. You can see on page 2 a summary of what this could look like district-wide when it comes to accessory guest units, taking out the idea of merging properties together, right? So just looking at, okay, what accessory buildings are out there, what accessory buildings could be built. You know, and our analysis suggests, well, before I say anything else, quick disclaimer. There are a lot of moving parts and we're looking at all these as hypotheticals and et cetera. So, you know, your mileage may vary if you own one of these properties and are looking to do this, right? But this is what we came up with. About a quarter of the parcels would not be able to take advantage of this new amendment. They are already over lot coverage, or they don't have accessory buildings, so they can't, there just simply isn't the opportunity. But over half, so 18 to the 32, would be able to have up to 3 guest units. They have accessory buildings of sufficient size or could build accessory buildings of sufficient size to get there to 3 dwelling units. There are only 3 parcels where any more than 3 guest units would be possible, and only a couple where you could go all the way up to like 6. When it comes to the possibility of merging properties, obviously, if we went through every single permutation, this would be even longer than it is. However, there are opportunities to do that. In many cases, you're looking at lot coverage being an issue. And when you start combining properties together, in the particular properties we've been talking about, they are both already non-conforming with regard to lot coverage. The combined lot would come in between, where we're at right now. And in speaking with Luke and Dave, we consider that not to be increasing in nonconformity. But in case of other lots, if you combine them together, you end up with, lot coverage that exceeds the 25% maximum and is not reducing anybody's lot coverage on any analysis. So our conclusion there was that those lot combinations would not be permitted, and therefore, so there are some permutations of combined lots that would not work out. But as I said, there definitely is the possibility of that happening, and creating a complex, bed and breakfast complex made of multiple houses. There's the possibility of that having multiple times. We'll admit that. But that said, we are open to limitations, specific limitations in the amendment that would limit lots combinations to 1 combination, limit the number of accessory guest buildings. Those types of reasonable limits we are definitely open to and can help control any sort of proliferation. So with that, we are here to answer any questions as you deliberate on this further.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chair,
yeah, go
if I
ahead.
may.
Go ahead.
The 5 bullet points, you call them questions, that are on the first page of your report. Were those generated by your firm? Were they suggested by city staff? I read our last month's meeting minutes. Where did those 5 questions come from?
So that was our interpretation of what the planning commission wanted to sort of discuss tonight. As you guys looked to answer the broader question of what would the overall impact of this amendment be beyond the particular couple of lots in question. So what we did is we went through the 32 lots that are in the district and try to answer those questions. And the purpose of those is that basically the analysis of can you do accessory guest units on this property fails if the answer to any of the first couple is no, right? If a bed and breakfast isn't permitted, well, we're not even talking about accessory guest units. You can cross that parcel off. Now, a bed and breakfast is permitted because it's permitted by right. Are there existing accessory buildings or could any accessory buildings be built? If the answer is no and no, well, we're not talking about accessory guest. So we wanted to make sure those sort of gateway questions are answered. And once we know, all right, this lot is eligible, it's possible, then we look at more detailed things like lot coverage, size of the accessory buildings, setbacks in determining whether this be feasible there.
And just so at least I'm clear, this report and everything else that you're billing is being billed to the owners of Wickwood Inn, not the city? Is
Yeah,
that correct?
our client is well, it's not them. There's we are sub-consultants to these guys who are the architect for the renovations that are ongoing at Wickwood Inn.
Okay. It strikes me that this is yet again a single property owner pushing an item that would certainly benefit them and trying to make it much broader to, and I'm not saying, every single ordinance that I think we come up with often starts, not every single ordinance, a lot of ordinances start with a single property owner saying, what about? We got a letter, guy wants chickens, for example, city council. So I'm not dismissing the importance or significance of that, but I do want to be clear that this seems to be expanding into something that I'm not sure anybody other than the owners of Wickwood Inn are clamoring for in our city. I've not heard anybody saying, gosh, I wish we had more bed and breakfasts in the downtown area. Maybe there are people who feel that way. So that's my thought.
If I could just ask a question. So this is R4, so bed and breakfasts are permitted throughout R4 as a matter of right,
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that threshold question is resolved. So then it's, if someone becomes a B&B and we do this, then suddenly they have the potential permission to do additional accessory dwelling units that maybe they didn't before. Is that kind of in a nutshell what we're
Well,
saying?
right now, accessory guest units are not envisioned in the ordinance at all. And it's been in our very initial discussions with staff, the interpretation was they are not permitted. That doing an accessory dwelling unit is permitted, but if you're a B&B, you don't want a dwelling unit, you want a guest unit, especially with the cap on short-term rentals. So if it was, well, we'll do accessory dwelling unit, then we'll make a short-term rental, well, you're going to run afoul of the cap that you guys have on short-term rentals. And so that is not an option to move forward with something like
But the
this.
cap's not applicable to R4.
That's true.
So
Although I will say, we're not proposing dwelling units. That's important here. We're not proposing something someone can live in
The
permanently.
problem with the dwelling unit is it's only one party and you'd want to have three parties in this new one potentially, right? At Mary Street, for example.
But I don't think that's the concern. The concern is there is no intention for someone to live here permanently. And
It's a
therefore,
guest room.
we're not interested in being subject to the rules applicable to a place where someone lives permanently. It's not what's being proposed. So that goes for building code and zoning.
Okay, so I'm going to recap some of the things that happened while you were gone and before you joined us, Craig. So they came forward, and one of the things that we were concerned about is how does that affect other properties in the district? They've put a good report together here showing all those things. It doesn't address other districts that also allowed bed and breakfasts. That's not a huge stopper for me personally, but it should be something we think about, is because this is addressing how it works in these districts and how it would affect it. We might want to think about the other districts, but I don't think that stops us from being able to make a decision. We do want to talk about what is the definition of a B&B, because I think that's changing from what maybe we have in our paperwork or not defined well enough so that it doesn't proliferate in some fashion in these districts where it's allowed. And then there should be some discussion of, do they need to come for a special land use or a site plan if they were to go forward with these things? So those are, I think, things we should talk about. And that we would want to have before we voted to go into a public meeting with this. So those are my thoughts of where we've been, where we're at, and
I mean, it's an amazing report. I don't minimize the exhaustiveness of the report, and the in-depthness of the report, so.
and I don't know if you're here when Austin was putting good points together about how the concern was, we run into somebody that just makes a whole block of bed and breakfast. They just keep annexing properties, but that's not the intent, and we feel that that's protected against. I think those types of concerns have been dealt with, at least in this district, especially with this report. So those points I made about what is the definition of a B&B, and that we're comfortable with what that is, and if we need to bring them to a special land use or a site plan to planning so that they don't, administratively, they could look at the setbacks and some of the easy things. I don't have no worries about that, but it's a lack of public acknowledgement of this new property is going to have a B&B with accessory, not dwelling units, guest rooms. So that's a couple things that I think we need to decide and talk about. And maybe it happens here today, or maybe we ask for David or yourself to come up with what is the definition of that. But I think we're real close to being able to make a decision.
Right. And obviously, we have provided some examples of accessory guest rooms in the past, and delineations may seem quite similar, but it's quite serious to separate them from accessory dwelling units as we have them right now. So yeah, the last meeting, obviously, we went over all that, and the request was for this specific report, and for you guys to sort of interpret that and take that in and make a few decisions. So obviously, it's a little different without Steve here. You're doing a fantastic job, though, CJ. Thank you so much too, for putting a lot on you. But obviously, the report is in front of you. So hopefully that
But yeah,
helps in some way. Obviously, one of the big points was that that Steve kept making, and I've heard from elsewhere also, is that we should maybe be looking at a holistic view of reviewing all of the commercial districts, not just this specific one. But at the same time, they've provided some fantastic ideas. So it's,
yeah, I'm supportive of the idea. I wish we had a better definition of the bed and breakfast, what that is, because I'm afraid of how it could proliferate, not only in this district, but in others. And
Right,
then-
right.
And then if they need to come forward with a site plan for approval, we should make that type of determination as well.
So just a question, maybe, Luke, the state has their definition of what a bed and breakfast is, correct? It's,
Yeah.
I think I read it was maximum 10 rooms on premise, so
Right.
on and so forth.
Structure.
yeah. I think you provided me with this in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I
does-
think-
my question is, do our current definition of B and Bs fall subservient to that or supersede it?
I did discuss this, I think, with Dave when it was brought up to me. Austin brought this up a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and we kind of discussed it. And it's not. We are able to, if you were to approve this, we would be able to allow accessory guest rooms or accessory guest buildings. It wouldn't contradict the state's
No, but
description.
my question
essentially.
is there's still a statutory cap of 10, maximum 10 rooms, 2 persons per room, which I believe is spelled out in the state statute.
Okay.
Do we know the answer to
It is,
that?
but I think the state statute says that it, pretty much local regulations do what you want. Like it goes down to the local level. So I think they just kind of put it out there. And that's what the state level definition is, and kind of take this if you want, but then it almost makes it seem like the state one is subservient to the local regulations and we have the control over that.
Hence why I think we need a good definition of what we think it is.
Agreed.
Because is there a max of 10 total rooms?
And I think that's something that we can, I can double check and provide for you guys too. I think if you think this isn't enough, I think it would be good to provide some very straightforward direction.
Yeah. I mean, if the state has a statutory cap
But I guess.
and
is it-
we do not have a statutory cap, does that mean we're bound by the statutory cap of the state? That's
Yeah.
really what my
That's a
question
good
is.
question.
To my knowledge, no, but even if it is 10, Wickwood's over 10, aren't they? Yeah, aren't they 14 or, yeah, so it's.
That doesn't necessarily mean anything.
It doesn't, but I'm just like, it shows that they're operating above that and there's no conflict. So the state law in this situation, to my reading, doesn't preempt local regulations from being more permissive.
Demonstrates that it's already.
Yeah.
By city law.
Which would be nice to have our definition, so they'd be within what we think it is, so it's official that way.
Sure.
In Mr. Chairman, the definition itself, the state's definition is really, it refers to that it's a residential building, so that it's basically a commercial operation, but it's subject to residential building code and requirements, subject to state law. Now, aside from that, we do have a definition that says that it is a residential building occupied by the owners or resident manager, which has sleeping rooms available for rent by transient people on short-term basis. We did go then and we amended that definition as part of this ordinance to include associated accessory guest buildings allowable under certain circumstances. So we basically have the standard definition for bed and breakfast, and then we add on to that as we can through our own local zoning, an extra provision that we can have, detached rooms as part of other buildings. So each of those would have to qualify individually to be able to meet residential building code and meet state requirements for building code. So I think we're pretty squared away with the definition itself. Now you did mention, and we've mentioned this in the past as well, I think between Luke and I was very surprised that we don't have a maximum room count in our local ordinance. A lot that I deal with usually have 6, maybe there's some that have up to 10, some might be the maximum that the state allows. But we don't have that maximum, which is, something we could certainly add to one individual building. Maybe it's something that is more in line with the state, but then again, this facility is currently exceeding that, so it really doesn't matter for that case. And then to address your point about site plan, yes, absolutely. This proposed change would include these associated accessory guest buildings as special land uses. So that would not just be an administrative staff review, it would have to come to the planning commission and be subject to the very general discretionary special land use standards that you already have in the book. And then we also proposed 2 additional discretionary standards that would apply specifically to these guest buildings. So we've built in a lot of authority for the planning commission to control this, to use your more subjective discretionary review authority through special land use to make sure what's out there, what's being proposed, it meets the character of the neighborhood and is compatible with neighboring properties. So we've built in a lot of authority for the planning commission, and then also included some guardrails in here as well, such as the maximum number of units in a detached accessory guest building. And there's a few other things in there as well. But I think we've built in a lot of authority, and really the only thing that we're missing is the maximum number in a principal bed and breakfast home, but we don't have that now in the current ordinance, and this is already over it. So we're really focusing on the accessory portion of it. The only other things that I could consider, if you're looking for a little bit more protection on the overall bulk and scale of this, as mentioned, I think Chris said we could possibly limit this to one lot combination. And if you look at a lot of the blocks in this zoning district, this is about exactly 1/4 of the block, and I think that's probably as far as we'd want to go. So you could even put in some sort of scale requirement so that it doesn't take up more than 1/4 of an existing block, or something in that nature. So there's some ways that we could also control the bulk and scale of this if there were concerns with it. So
I jump in real quick. So where I'm at right now is, especially when you look at the Tri-Community Master Plan, it's kind of encourages in residential districts to have these accessory units. So I'm kind of fine with that part there, but I still get hung up on the lot absorption and how that happens. But I guess if we just permitted the accessory guest units, and then I guess we kind of limit it to no combination of lots, what would prevent Wickwood from operating Wickwood at 120 Mary Street, I guess? Like, could they still do that without?
So 120 Mary Street could be operated as a short-term rental. Yes.
Okay, so it would have to be absorbed into the lot to fall under Wickwood.
They could not be parceled out by them.
Okay,
And then the guests there would not have access to breakfast over in the Wickwood house or any other sort of amenities that are offered there.
120 Mary would have to be an independent bed and breakfast with its own resident manager, breakfast served on site, and so on. So it could be established as a bed and breakfast on its own.
that would be be a pain. Okay.
And we prefer not to maintain it as a short-term rental.
So what we would be, if we were to do something, we'd be then setting for this, we wouldn't be approving it here. We'd be setting the next meeting as the open public meeting, or is this the approval that then goes
Well, so originally we did set the public hearing a few months ago, and then we never closed
Right,
it. So,
yeah.
yeah, this is essentially is a continuation
Yeah,
of the public
continuation. So
hearing.
if we,
So you do have an option to approve it tonight.
we can approve
if
it,
That's,
deny it, or hold one more time for definition, getting our stuff
if
squared away.
there is more that you wanted to see, we could postpone and bring it back, yeah.
My personal feeling is that this getting our city ordinance correct with the number of rooms that we think's available and covering some of what we have. I think we should show what our max is and not have,
So having a maximum occupancy on the bed and breakfast.
yeah.
Okay. I think he's saying
I
principal.
think overall,
Yeah.
I think overall.
Oh, okay, sorry, yep.
Though if you establish a principal building limit, you have an accessory building limit, and you have
Okay.
a limit on the total number of accessory buildings, so that would be an
Right.
overall
Sure, yeah,
maximum that would be established.
yeah.
And I'd also point out that if you do that, that will limit the absorption of other lots.
Exactly.
Right. So that's something we could have ready for the next meeting if you'd like.
But again, I, one humble voice.
I wouldn't mind having another month to have a chance to
I'm
digest.
sorry
this,
to
but
push off on these guys. We've been here for a
But
little bit, but
If it helps, I have a general bias towards moving this forward, if that gives any indication of the direction. Even for the fact that R4, I mean, one of the things in the definition is the zone is not intended to be static, but rather to adjust with the development needs of the community. So I think with that in mind, something like this is something we should really take seriously.
I'll entertain motion either way. If there's enough consensus, I think some of those things that we're talking about with sizing, we could do secondary to this.
Oh, wow.
We can change our definition of the bed and breakfast. to that
So what-
effect.
Oh,
It's
you mean
currently
after the
vague
fact.
enough. Yeah, yeah.
After
What
the fact.
specifically would we be voting on? Because I'm not sure I saw a text amendment in the packet for tonight. Maybe I missed it, but.
No, I didn't
No.
see it either either in the
I don't think
minutes
I included
or
it.
in the agenda
We
item.
have to go back a few minutes to
Yeah, so
whatever
then
the
The
approval.
proposed ordinance that
Oh,
we're supposedly talking about
Next
amending.
meeting then, I think.
Yeah, I haven't
Why-
seen it, so
Yeah.
And
I
while
can't vote on
I
it.
conceptually, I think I'm where Craig is at, because of the lack of specific information in this package that we need. Reluctantly, because I feel really badly that we've taken all this time, but reluctantly, I think we should. But let's be ready to act. at the next
I'm
meeting.
in favor of the spirit of what we're trying to do. I think it makes sense for this town and like you said, for the district and the way our zoning's been worded in our master plan. My only hangup, if there is one, is I'd like to just knock out the maximum number of rooms at some point in time. I'd love to see it before we approve it, if we can get that in by next meeting. I don't know what information we need to get there. That's why I was referring to the state
right.
statutes.
Well, we could have a couple options ready as well, you know, yeah.
Because we really got, there's a couple of dimensions to this, right? There's, as you said, right, there's the max, which can be calculated, but then, we've come up with 2 accessory structures. I don't know if that's the right number or not. I don't know if it's, should be 1 or more, or, and then we have 3 per structure, and I don't know if that's the right number. So there's kind of those elements there that I just like to flush out a little bit. And I respect that this has been going on for a couple of meetings now, and similar, Bobby, to you, I don't want to see it pushed out any longer. I think we're very, very close, but just like that.
I think we're letting them know that we're this close, and we're going the right way for that, so. So,
Could I get an opinion from our city attorney whether, say, on the number of rooms in a bed and breakfast, whether the state statute supersedes whatever limits us to whatever we might try to do in our city ordinance, or do we have free sway to be more expansive than the state statute, for example?
So off the top of my head, I'm not familiar with the state statute preempting the local regulation on the number of rooms, but it's something I would want to look into more specifically to give you a more concrete answer on that. Like I'm familiar with the definition of transient facility having a 10-room like sort of trigger in it, but I'm not familiar with it preempting local regulation. So if the commission were to postpone this, that's something we could absolutely prepare an analysis on for the next meeting. But off the top of my head, I would say I'm not aware of a preemption issue.
Okay, that's exactly what I was hoping you would, well, not hoping that you'd say, but I'm not, yeah, I'd appreciate some kind of legal opinion, on that by our next meeting as part and parcel of us adopting an ordinance. Thanks.
Quick Hail Mary. You guys do, your action, whenever it happens, is to recommend to council, and there is lead time before they take it up, and they, I believe, have 2 meetings before, first reading and an adoption meeting. There is opportunity for further study as this moves forward. Understanding the questions are legitimate, so if we're pushing off a month, that's fine too, but I did want to point that out. Yeah, there's still time.
Not voting yes on an ordinance.
Well, I would not feel comfortable. It's not our purpose to pass along an ordinance that's vague or incomplete or that's not our job. And they have every right to, but by contrast to say, okay, let's say we set a maximum of 10 rooms. They have every right to say, no, we want 12 rooms. We want 8 rooms. But to say, gosh, we don't know how many rooms it should be. That's on you. I think that's an abdication of our responsibility.
That's fair.
This is close.
So is that enough information to work up a couple of options for the next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a legitimate discussion. I think what our role in developing those options versus Mr. Jurczyk or yourself, I'm
Okay.
happy to help.
Sure.
But I just, whatever we need to help with, we can help with.
Right.
Shouldn't we be having a city employed person or persons drafting the ordinance rather than a private entity that's representing a property owner?
Yeah, I mean, that is,
Either yourself or David, or in
So-
conjunction with them?
yeah, Horizon has been working, Horizon put together the amendment, the proposed amendments. But it's, I was more asking, do we have enough information? Does this, make sense in conjunction with them, for us to put something together for you?
And when we did the first draft because it's required of us in submitting our application for this to be considered.
Right.
From there, Mr. Jurczyk has been amending and drafting and is the keeper of this document that you're considering.
And could we get a copy of that sooner
Yeah.
than later so that we have some time to ponder it?
It was
over the next
probably in a
month?
previous meeting minutes, so it's probably in a couple meetings ago, but I'm gonna say,
Yeah,
ask
no,
David to
absolutely,
make sure it
yeah.
goes into next month, so we have an amendment to read and
So if I look at my packet from last month, it'll be there.
it'd be, yeah.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yes, to clarify, the final version is in the packet from last month and it's dated 12/13/24.
Thank you.
Even, but just as a matter of procedure,
Yeah, absolutely.
could we, when we're going to be considering it, it would be nice.
Yeah, no,
Because I'm
that's
curious previous
on me.
packets.
Yep.
So I think we need a motion to table.
Do we?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I would say,
It would postpone
Postpone, table.
to the following meeting.
Chairman,
just-
I'll make a
Wait, wait.
motion that we
sorry to interrupt, guys. I was gonna say, just like last time, per the bylaws, just make sure that's reflected in the minutes, the reason, and then the time and date of the next meeting. I know it's your regular February meeting, but just make sure that's in the minutes.
Looks like Thursday, the 20th.
Yep.
Chairman Bajrak, I will make a motion that we delay finalization of this current open meeting until February 20th for the purposes of reviewing the final considerations around the number of rooms to be permitted under one specific bed and breakfast license, as well as to review the proposed language for said
Second.
ordinance.
Second motion.
Roll call?
Patrick,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Yes.
Lachey,
Yes.
and Marino.
Yes. Thank you. We'll be back in February.
Okay, old business number, letter B, 5B, it's page 49 in your packet. Accessory dwelling units, special land use standards. I have to call this to order. This is brand new. This isn't a continuing
Yeah.
one. So I call to order the meeting for the accessory dwelling unit special land use standards. This one.
Okay, yeah, I'll kick us off here. Thank you. After several productive discussions, we're in front of you tonight with a draft ordinance which aims to do two things. Essentially, we would the first amendment was strike the current 375 square foot minimum gross finished floor area requirements for new accessory dwelling units. Instead of a specific size limitation, we're proposing that ADUs comply with the state of Michigan Building Code area requirements. This change will provide a little bit more flexibility when it comes to building a new ADU. The second thing, which I personally believe is a little more important, is the second change removes the requirement that all ADUs must comply with current zoning requirements outlined in section 154022W. It removes the requirements that all ADUs must comply with section 154022W in order to be rented. While the requirements for special land use approval will remain in place, this amendment allows existing non-conforming ADUs to be rented. Essentially, the issue that we've been speaking about the last couple of months is that we have special land use requirements to rent an accessory dwelling unit, but those special land use requirements are tied to the new build standards for accessory dwelling units. And most of our accessory dwelling units in the city of Saugatuck are non-conforming due to the fact that they were built quite a long time ago. And as our regulations change, we make it harder and harder for these units to be rented, because obviously over time things shift and, we implement new regulations. And so things like an accessory dwelling unit having its own utilities stops it from being rented. An accessory dwelling unit that is 250 square feet instead of the minimum can't be rented. It may still have occupancy. It may still be, you may be able to live in it, but you cannot gain a rental license for it. So we will still require a special land use approval for it. We just won't tie it to the new build standards. This is a public hearing, so
Do we have a presenter or an applicant, or we'll just go right to public comments?
either way,
Internal, so it's actually-
it's internal. Yeah, I think this came about from essentially me having a huge influx of applicants that simply
Several, yeah.
didn't meet the requirements. I mean, there are 3 in the audience right now.
Right.
And prospectively, one's too big, one's too small, one's too close to the road and has its own utilities. And so these standards that aren't being met are, it's just a tough situation, and we can't approve these rentals. And actually, I think all of them, or maybe 2 of the 3, have been rented in the past.
Extended periods of time.
So, so this is something we've been working on, and we're hoping tonight to get a recommendation to City Council to amend these regulations.
So I think we should open up for public comments
Absolutely.
in agreement with this amendment. If anyone wants to come and speak to it or is online would like to speak to it, come to the podium, say your name and location. You got 3 minutes.
Just quickly, Paul Whitfield, 450 Spear Street, and owners of the Book Nook right here on Butler. I guess I'll say something because I kicked off kind of this process, but here to support again the change in the language and emphasizing the importance of these units with primary residence is a great solution for the town. Being able to rent it out, and yet you have you're a neighbor as a primary resident, and you're watching over things. So appreciate all your work on this, and I think it's been about 4 months now. So looking forward to it concluding. Thanks.
Anyone else for this amendment?
Russ Gardner, 245 Spear Street. I generally support the direction this is moving as a former planning commissioner and city council member. The question I have, though, is we have a newly built ADU, which we have a short-term rental certificate, et cetera, fully compliant. Question is, though, is that we had to actually reduce our square footage to comply with the zoning ordinance, and I'm assuming that maximum is not changing.
Correct. That
correct?
maximum is not changing.
Okay, right, it's just the minimum that,
So the only proposed change to building at all is the removal of the required minimum, which I think was suggested by the planning commission to look into that. But yeah, mostly this is just removing the requirements for,
okay.
yeah.
So the
new
maximum
builds.
is 30% or 600 square feet.
Exactly, yeah.
For new builds.
Covers less, yeah.
For existing, any non-compliant would be, but for new builds, that's the case.
Okay, thank you.
Say that again, what you just said, please?
If it's a non-compliant ADU and they have to come get the special land use if they don't already have one, they would have to do that, but they would still apply. They don't have to meet the new build standards for their setbacks for the power.
Yeah.
Independent, yeah.
They're dimensionally non-conforming.
Yeah, but
It's not only
non-conforming.
dimensional.
But they have, many of them in our, these three people.
No,
have
no, I understand.
units
I was
that
here
don't
for those.
comply. Yeah, okay.
I haven't been absent that long.
Does
Any-
this, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Before we get to
Close
deliberation, we have
public
to go
comment.
to opposing. Anyone that would like to speak opposing this amendment? We have, we will ask online. Anybody online? And at that point, we can close public comments.
We've got a general.
We have a general, well, do you have any other commentary from anyone in the room or online? No, so at this point, we can close the public comment portion and go to deliberation amongst their commissioners.
The only question I had, does this deal with the utility issue of having to have, because you have to kind of thread the needle of it, this section and that section. I can't remember where that requirement showed up. Is it in the section that you're saying is no longer applicable to new ADUs?
I believe that's in 154.022W, which is the new build standards.
Yeah, I was looking at it quickly, which
It would
doesn't,
still apply to new build. That still would apply to new build to get if they were going to build an ADU.
sure. But if the utility requirement isn't in W, and that's the only section that you're saying doesn't apply to existing ADUs, then that's an unresolved issue. I think it's, if we can confirm it now, or I just didn't think it was in that section, but I'd hate to do this and then have that still be open if we didn't. Without that, I
2
trust
seconds.
it to you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, but
Yeah, it's NW.
Okay.
I would not bet a lot of money on it, but I'd bet a little bit of money on it, that it's NW. The question I have,
Sorry to interrupt you. It's in W8. Accessory dwellings shall not be permitted to have independent electric, gas, or water meters.
Fantastic, thank you.
thanks. Mr. Chair, if I may, I fully understand, and that's why I wanted you to say what I thought we were all on the same page with, is that if somebody wants to build a new ADU, they have to come before us and it has to comply with
W.
No.
To build a new.
If somebody wants to build a new accessory dwelling unit, they have no requirement to come to the planning commission.
Oh.
If they want to build a new ADU, that's administrative. If they want to rent it, they still have to.
Sorry.
Yeah, just clarifying.
No,
You
no, no,
can-
you were absolutely right. And I left out a key phrase.
Yeah.
So when we look at revised J, I wonder if we want to insert the word existing, such as an existing rental accessory dwelling unit shall comply with the following requirements. Because if we don't do existing, then I don't see how somebody who has a new build ADU has to go through all the hoops if they want to rent. I don't see the wording, how that still maintains the two-tier or the bifurcated requirements for a newly built ADU that has to comply with, if they want to rent it, to comply with section W versus a pre-existing ADU that is being rented, because this simply says a rental accessory dwelling unit shall comply with the following. Now, if you're saying, well, if it's a brand new ADU, it can't be rented, couldn't have been rented. I think that's a little convoluted way to, maybe another way, an accessory dwelling unit before being rented shall comply with, I don't know, but I mean, I just wonder if we need an additional word or two.
But if it's a new one, it wouldn't be a legal,
It wouldn't be an
it wouldn't be
ADU.
a legal ADU if it didn't comply with W.
It's a legal ADU, it just can't be rented.
Not if it doesn't meet W.
Meet W.
Okay, I'm coming here and I build a new ADU and I want to rent it and it says a rental accessory dwelling unit shall comply with the following. Period. That's all it says.
But then it has the standards.
Yeah.
We're not saying, sorry. So previously it said it shall conform with 154022, which is the new build standards, and the following. Now it just says the following instead of complying with the new build standards. And the following are things such as a rented accessory dwelling unit shall be only permitted on a parcel
Oh, I
that
understand.
contains.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no. I'm just saying, I don't see how the proposed new wording of subsection J differentiates, or anywhere else differentiates between a newly built ADU, which has to jump through all the hoops of section W before it can be rented, and a pre-existing ADU, which is being rented now, that doesn't have to comply. I don't see this in the wording I don't see in any of our wording of our proposed statute, proposed ordinance, that differentiation that is important to all of us sitting here.
I think you're saying that's sort of a cutoff for the build date of the ADU. Like if you build it today and then you want to rent it 2 years, maybe I'm not saying this right, but I think I understand where you're coming from. There's no differentiation. If you build it now, you don't need to comply with W, but you want to rent it in 5 years. How do we know?
Or yes, if I were under that scenario, I come in under the new language and I would argue under the new language, I don't have to comply with W.
Well,
It's not what we want.
no, sorry. So if you're talking about, if you build a new accessory dwelling unit,
Right.
Start
Okay.
there. That'll-
section W, those are the standards you have to meet to build new.
Where does it say that?
That's in a completely different section. This is special land use standards. So this isn't to do with building new. This is to gain the license. To gain the license, you have to meet the following standards. Before it said you have to meet the following standards and meet 154022, which is a completely separate set of dimensional standards to build an accessory dwelling unit. So if you come in, we're not deleting, we're not wiping that section. We're just not referencing it in the special land use standards to gain a rental license. So somebody building a new ADU has to meet the exact same, it still has to meet those standards. But we have no reason to cover that here. It's already covered under section 154022W.
If they
Make
came
it-
to
make
us,
it-
if they came to us with the special land use to approve one for rental and they didn't follow W when they built it, it wouldn't be a legal
It'd be an
ADU.
ADU. ADU have an occupancy certificate
Yeah.
assigned to it. So they wouldn't get that certificate if they didn't meet the standards, therefore they couldn't come.
Yeah, when they
They
came to,
couldn't go for a-
when they
yeah.
come to do that. we say,
Yeah,
well, you don't have-
yeah, so building an ADU obviously requires a zoning permit, so it takes review, and if they don't meet those standards, they don't get the zoning permit and they can't build the ADU. None of that's changing.
Right.
Something a little unrelated, I guess, but still within this. We have no definition of cooking, so why is it in there? That's one thing that,
That's in the one that we're not changing though. That's in W, I think you're.
no,
talking
no,
about.
it's in this one, in section C, it says, that, total gross finished floor area and time for living, sleeping, bathing, eating, cooking. Is that required for them to have cooking? This is something that I discussed, I think, when we were kind of talking about our goals and I think with what we heard from city council when they were debating short-term rental restrictions, that we want more full-time residents and we want people to be able to supplement their income. So I think with accessory dwelling units, we should make it as permissive as possible. So if someone wants to rent a room or rent an accessory dwelling unit, doesn't have a kitchen, I think they should be able to. So, and if we're not going to define what cooking means, why is it in there? Is it a hot
That
plate?
section,
Is it stove?
that section has not changed. So the existing section W3 is one large block of text. The
Mm-hmm.
only reason why that second part of it is in the new ordinance is because we're basically dividing up paragraph 3 into 3 subparagraphs. And we're just showing how that second part of that first block is there. So I mean, I think all your points are well taken, but we're only addressing in that part, section 1 of the ordinance is only a change to the square footage requirement, the minimum square footage requirement.
But are we not allowed to, while we have it in front of us? I mean, if anyone even agrees with me, is that something that we could address and push forward with it? Or are we only limited to be able to discuss the square footage standards?
It depends on and Trent could probably chime in, but it does depend on how general the public notice was. I mean, if it says that I think we've referred to this as an ordinance to address the sizing requirement and the rental. So Trent may be able to chime in whether or not we would need to renotice something that touches something different with ADUs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. If the notice language was broad enough to encompass that, then you may be able to make that change. I will say though that this is also on a postponed public hearing. And so just if we're going to start making more changes that were not there when it was originally noticed, I would probably recommend renoticing it just as a matter of course, just because some of the provisions are now different from when we did notice it. And so that would be my recommendation.
I don't think this one is the postponed public hearing.
So old business, so.
Oh, I apologize. It was on the last meeting, I think, but we just set it for a public hearing.
Yeah,
Then I
so
would-
we had it come back a couple times, but the public hearing was
Just
set
started
for
today,
today, yeah.
Okay.
And just one follow-up too. I mean, we certainly could open up the can of worms, because section 154.022W has a lot of issues overall. I mean, so if we're looking at one part, the whole thing needs some cleanup. So I guess just what would be our intent tonight? Is it just to address the primary issues based on these special land use requests and getting these folks taken care of, or cleaning up the entire ADU section, which it does need to be done at some point. So I think it's maybe just a matter of priority and what you want done now versus the next look at it.
I don't know. I mean, I guess my
Okay,
thing is,
I agree with you.
I'm okay with it, but then if someone is waiting to do something, or if they're having to make changes, or if they're having to construct or do it to be in compliance, like if they don't have to build a kitchen or a cooking area, we shouldn't make that.
But that would be in W. If they're gonna build new, that's a new
Yeah.
structure. So that's something that what David's suggesting is we move to that
Yeah.
in the future, but for what we're looking at.
Or a
today,
current one that doesn't have one, would they have to abide by this?
No,
maybe not
that's
conforming
existing.
anyways.
So
Okay.
yeah, no, we're not.
Really not
Okay.
conforming, hopefully.
Okay,
So I don't think
So,
that would apply, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't want to hold anyone up either, but something.
and obviously we can look at any ordinances moving forward. If we're not comfortable with the new build standards, that's something we can look at too. The main point of today is just not relating the special land use to the new build standards. So-
But you haven't given an opinion yet. What's your feeling?
I think that we should address what we committed to address tonight. We have people who are waiting. for
In
this
your
information.
in your position supportive of it at this time.
I'm the same way. I agree. Yeah.
I am as well.
Since we take action, somebody make a motion to approve, we can move forward or deny.
Chair Bazarek, I'm on a roll tonight.
Real quick, I'm going to vote yes. I am reading everything I can read in our ordinances, and I still assert that someone who, I don't see I don't see a differentiation between a newly built ADU and what they can do in order to be able to rent, and a pre-existing ADU and what they need to do in order to rent. I think by taking out by the language, it's being overly simplified. And I think we're setting ourselves up for a problem in the future. But I'm not going to stand in the way of moving this forward, but that's my concern. And apparently neither our attorney or our advisor or our zoning administrator shares my opinion, but I don't see any language that differentiates between the two things that we want to do. Preserve the requirements for a newly built ADU who wants to be rented versus allowing pre-existing ADUs that have all kinds of limitations because of the history of when they were built, and the history of when they were approved. And I just don't see it in the language of our ordinance, proposed ordinance.
Oh. Well, I can speak to that if you like. I mean, I'm not sure I really understand what you're saying, to be honest, because we have existing non-conforming dwelling units and existing non-conforming accessory dwelling units and new accessory dwelling units. If you're going to build a new one,
Yep.
you have to meet certain standards, okay? Standards that maybe an old one doesn't meet. All this section says is that to be able to rent the old one, okay, it doesn't have to meet the standards that the new one had to meet when the new one was built. So all we're saying is that moving forward, these old structures that are already in place, that maybe they were built 30 years ago, we're not making them conform to Section W, which we're leaving alone, apart from the minimum requirement. We're just saying that the old structures don't need to meet the new structures regulations. That's all we're saying with that. Whereas right now, we're stopping people from renting because these old structures aren't meeting the dimensional requirements and other requirements that are laid out in Section W.
And let me add, I feel it's by leaving it this way, if we were to change in the future, change what it is to build a legal one, we wouldn't have to go back and change this. It would be whatever we determine is a legal ADU later at the time would be what applies to this. So those changing items of W wouldn't affect them coming to ask for a rental, special land use.
Either I'm 100% wrong or I'm not being clear in what I'm trying to say, but go ahead with your motion. I've hammered it 3 times and got no, so thank you for indulging me.
Chair Bazarek, I make a motion to adopt an ordinance to amend Title 15, Chapter 154 of the Code of City of Saugatuck to amend Section 154.0.22, Sections W3, to revise the required minimum gross finished floor area for accessory dwelling units and to amend Section 154.092J to allow existing accessory dwelling units that do not conform to the requirements of 154.022W to qualify for rental if all other applicable requirements are satisfied.
Good job.
So I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote? Sure. Yes.
Alden,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Vaughn,
Yes.
Lachey,
Yes.
and Mayor.
Yes.
Okay. New business on page 53 of your packet. 880 Holland Street, site plan review for additional to commercial building in neighborhood marine district.
Do you have to close the public meeting?
I think we did when we closed.
Did
the
we?
public,
Okay,
uh,
stay,
yeah.
sorry.
Yes, so next up is the Southerner. I think we're all familiar with that. They are proposing several improvements to their existing restaurant. The applicant submitted plans for a building addition, customer area fencing, an accessory 8-foot screening fence, and the installation of a generator. Your packet included a compliance review regarding all applicable zoning standards and requirements. I will note that this area lies within the historic district. They did go before the historic district and receive approval. Staff recommends approval of the site plan amendment contingent upon approval from the fire department and all other applicable departments.
Any comment? Well, do we move to a motion first, then we have commentary?
We could have the applicant
applicant,
come up
okay,
too. I mean,
applicant wants to
if you've got
present?
questions for the
Sure.
applicant.
Thanks for being here. I'm Amy Cook, owner at the Southerner Restaurant, 880 Holland Street. We also own the Shore Harbor Marina right there and a small accessory dwelling unit, short-term rental. Definitely interested in that conversation. So as Luke pointed out, we went before the Historic District Commission 2 weeks ago, and they had some excellent questions that kind of reinforced the fact that even though our structure and our campus doesn't necessarily contribute to as a historic structure, it does contribute to the historic fabric of the community, and in general contributes to the attraction of a lot of people to Saugatuck. So we've seen tremendous growth over the last 3 years. Post-COVID, my husband and I bought out our former partners in 21, and we've turned the business around and made a ton of improvements within and without the structure. So what we're running up against is we have an incredible amount of clients that come to us that get immediately put on a waiting list, and we don't want them to leave. So we have an area out front that is currently licensed for alcohol consumption, and we have a to-go window people can order through. But we're proposing to add to that space. So we have applied to the Liquor Control Commission to improve and expand our licensed space outdoors. That will be for waiting only, or for people that bring their dogs to our restaurant and want to eat, they can get takeout there. The addition we are proposing is 360 square feet. It will match the rest of the building and be fairly seamless in terms of materials and roof and general design. It is going to house storage only. We're putting a new walk-in cooler there, and we will have storage and prep space for the bar portion of our business. And that's all happening at the south end of the property. At the north end, where we have sort of the business of producing food for our restaurant, we have an existing fence that screens our walk-in coolers from the road. And we really love our neighbor, so we want to extend that fence to completely enclose all of our supporting structures over there and give her a much better view. And that would include turning that fence so that it's also screening from the water. So that also improves all of our boaters' views going down the river. We, of course, are subject to the same fallibilities in power that everyone else is in Saugatuck. We haven't had a power outage in a while, but 3 years ago, one in the middle of August was a definite problem. So we are proposing a new generator, and it should be large enough. I think we're going to do an 80 kilowatt hour generator to keep our refrigeration up and running and keep our guests warm if it happens to be in the winter. So that being said, we're not making any changes to seating, and we are not making any, overarching changes to the design of the restaurant.
Any questions for the applicant?
Yeah.
Big motion to get into deliberation?
I don't know.
Moved and seconded? Any commentary? They've been through the historic, they were approved by the Historic Commission?
Yep.
I think it's
Pretty straightforward, looking forward.
I
Straightforward.
went through it in detail, looks good to me.
Roll call?
Austin, you were the second.
Yeah.
Badrick,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Vaughn,
yes.
Lachey,
Yes.
and Mariner.
Yes.
On page 66 of your packets, 405 Park Street, site plan review, similar setup. So if you set us up and Luke, and then we'll have the
Yeah.
applicant show us what we're looking at.
Absolutely, yes. We have a proposal for internal renovations at 405 Park Street, along with the addition of new restrooms, storage rooms, and a 3 Seasons room beneath an existing deck. So your packet again included a compliance review of the project in relation to all applicable zoning standards and requirements. Staff recommends approval of the site plan contingent upon approval from all applicable departments and compliance with section 15104 of chapter 151, which is our flood damage prevention section. Essentially, we'll need a survey from the applicant showing the area of special flood hazard lines donated. This area is identified by FEMA and is contemplated in our zoning ordinance. So we need to ensure that essentially they're not building within a floodplain. So that's the only hang-up that we saw. So
is there something with Eagle in addition to?
yeah,
the
so
floodplain?
if they are within certain floodplains, they'd be required to get Eagle permits too, and that is where we cover ourselves by saying that approval from applicable departments
Okay, so-
required. So, yep.
Applicant here? You want to come and present?
Hello, I'm Dan Cook. My wife Sue and I own what was Casa Loma Resort and Marina. As you all have probably seen, we purchased that about 4 years ago. I'm not a developer. We've been doing this as a family project. We're staying very much in alignment with the way that it's operated, I understand, for over 40 years. There are the 4 areas that are either manager occupied, which my wife and I stay on the 3rd floor, or they are rented out to others. We've done a very limited amount of rental to date, mostly a couple corporate events. We have, since we acquired the property though, rented a third of the dock space to a pontoon boat rental, and that will continue on. We have a list of people that want to rent boat slips, and I believe we'll be prepared this season for a limited amount of boat slip rental. We haven't used external financing, so that slows these projects down considerably, and you have to prioritize things. The clubhouse area was low on the priority list with the docks, not really being ready or funding available to put the proper utilities to the docks. We didn't need the clubhouse. We focused on the spaces that could be rented for occupancy. So now we're to the point of the project where we're ready to build out the clubhouse. It's pretty much what it was before. I mean, it's gutted down to the studs now, but we're not really changing much. It'll have a small kitchen. It'll have one interior ADA accessible bathroom, and then it'll be pretty open, flexible seating area. The 2 bathrooms are to get away from all the porta-johns that we have to have for the boat rental operation. It's unsightly, not nearly as sanitary and nice. The boat rental operation seems to be very successful. And so I think the porta-johns will be a nice addition. We're doing them both as ADA accessible, which might be a little bit of overkill, but it creates a little space in there for storage. That space under the deck on the north end of what we call the lodge building is currently used for storage. The boat rental stores stuff, I store the mower and various things in there, so we're not expanding that space. We're just converting it to bathrooms. The one additional area of space that we gain is under the deck that faces the lake on the east side of the lodge building. We're going to make a 3-season room as proposed. It'll have radiant heat, but it won't be used in the winter, just the light radiant heaters. And that will allow, we're putting French doors there into the Marina Clubhouse. So it allows a little extra overflow space because it's a pretty small space. That lodge building's built like stairs. Got about 700 square feet on the bottom, and then it comes up because of the dune. And then you get 1,400 square foot on the 3rd floor, and then you get 21 on the second floor is 1,421. So the little bit of extra 3-season room will be nice in the summer. So that's pretty much the project. I have with me Dave Behrman, DLB Architects, that designed the project along with his civil engineer. and Scott Van Veerden of Scott Van Veerden Builders, who will build the project. Scott's same builder you probably saw last summer. We made some pretty significant progress. We finished a lot of the deck area. We sided it. We finished the window and door package that was previously permitted. Scott's team did that work and is going to continue on with this phase of the project.
Can you scroll to the map so you can show it on the screen for those that haven't seen it? See Mark.
Like 75, starting 75, 78, 79, something like that, depending what map you want.
I just want to make sure everybody's got a chance to look at if there's any particulars that you'd like to point out. You see, you talked through it. I've understood what it was, so I'm okay. No, I'm good. It's just a matter if you wanted to point to some particulars. Any questions for the applicant?
I do, regarding the floodplain, is there any of the, I think, as I understand, the only addition is the 3-season room, correct?
Yes, there's an existing deck structure. We took the deck off the east side of the house and it ran the entire length previously. We reduced the deck size to just that area off the sliders for the second floor. And under that deck area, we're building a 3-season room as proposed. I think I know the answer to the question to the floodplain issue. I had reached out to Eagle. I have email communication with them 3 years ago about some pending construction in that area. We were looking at a gazebo next to the willow tree, which I'll probably come back to you with at some point here, and was instructed that we did not need an Eagle permit for the landscaping or the gazebo, that we were not in the floodplain. So that is my understanding. I was given a contact by Prina Newhoff, and I reached out to Eagle via email. So I think I've got the answer, but I know you need it formally.
Yes, definitely.
Great, thank you. Yep. That takes care of that concern. Okay, correct? Yeah. Non-issue.
Like it looks good. Like as I go up and down the river, I see that you did work hard on it last year, so
We're
good-
trying.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Motion to get to deliberation?
Chairman Bajrak, make a motion to approve site plan for 405 Park Street, subject to the various departmental approvals that are
Approval,
congruent.
city departments and the flood
Compliance
prevention.
with section 151.04. I second.
Got it? Any further deliberation needed?
If we put in the compliance with section, the damage prevention provision, does that put the onus on the property owner to actually show us compliance? And what I'm getting at, why don't we, I'm suggesting a friendly amendment to just simply delete on the assertion of the property owner, simply limit the motion to approval from all applicable city departments and leave it at that.
You can. They would have to, essentially what we're asking is that they send their proof of all their compliance to myself, so I can see, okay, yeah, they're not in the floodplain and they don't need Eagle permits. It was just an extra level of cover, really, because this is quite a touchy area. It's a floodplain area. We just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. So.
And in your way of thinking, the compliance will come from a letter from Eagle saying that they're not in the floodplain area?
What I wanted to see was a survey that showed where the flood lines were. If we had correspondence from Eagle reviewing this project and saying this is not within the floodplain, I think that would satisfy us, unless Dave or Trent have any concerns there.
Are you concerned, Mark? Because I don't know if I'm picking up on it, because we're technically approving it right now without that. And just what you're going to get it and they're all good. But I guess the problem is if they just go ahead and do it and we never get that, we've technically approved it, right?
No.
Can we still go back and
The
get-
approval's contingent on that.
Okay.
The site, it
So
doesn't.
we're not approving it right now.
Essentially, you'd be giving me permission to approve it once I receive the documentation.
So
that
it doesn't
we
come
feel
back
we
to
need
us
it.
after you get the documentation.
It doesn't.
Sure, yes.
I did I reached out to Netterville this fall to see about a survey. There is no current survey. So it's about $4,000 in another 30 days, and that was in good weather to go through that process. And so just making you aware that will meaningfully delay this project, which will meaningfully impact what we thought was going to be an early summer rental period. We have not purposely taken any reservations because we wouldn't want to inconvenience a guest, but it's going to kick us back away. And if that's not fully the purview or necessary of this committee, I would appreciate that consideration. I just want you to know I looked into it, and that is what's going to have to happen to provide that proof to you.
No, I appreciate exactly what you're saying, but 151.04 states that all development shall be prohibited within areas of special flood hazard, as established in 151.03. So we need to do what we can to show that it isn't within that special flood hazard. And being that it is next to the water, there is some possibility that that line may encroach on your property, and we need to ensure that you're not developing within that area.
And you can't see that from the existing survey there's a survey I know you have on file from
All
many
surveys
years ago.
provided to me with regards to this application did not have that. I will definitely, I can happily run through everything we have. Obviously, you know, we've issued permits to the property before, so it's possible there is something, but we need something. And if that isn't something I can find, that would be something you'd have to produce.
Have you looked at the very provision you're referencing? Has anybody looked at the flood insurance study for Allegan County, all jurisdictions dated June 21, 2023?
There's a FEMA map that shows an overview. Essentially, it's shape files on top of an aerial image. The issue with that is that it's not overly accurate. It's just the
Parcel by parcel?
It's what? No, it is. But the thing is, when you have an overlay of such size, you can't guarantee its accuracy. Only a survey can do that. So if we looked at that, it may look like the whole house is within the flood zone.
That this right here.
That's that right there, yeah. And so if you look at Allegan
I
County's
saw it.
GIS,
That's what I'm concerned about.
sure. If you look at Allegan County's GIS software, Geographic Information System, you'll see that the everybody's parcel lines are quite drastically west, I think. It could be east, but you can't use that as a guarantee. A survey, or if Eagle reviewed this application, or if they reviewed these plans and stated that all plans were not within the flood plain, I think we'd be comfortable. But we need one we need one of those two things: a survey or correspondence from Eagle.
One additional piece of information that may contain some value to you. I commissioned a phase 1 environmental survey just in my diligence before purchasing it. There is and it's been 4 years since I've looked at it, but there is discussion and diagrams relative to the floodplain in that survey.
Yeah.
It's not, they didn't come out and physically survey, but in that study, it may contain enough to make you comfortable. I don't know, but I'll provide that to the.
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, our motion's just asking that it's approved by city departments and that it's in compliance with 151.04, which if he finds that to be the case, then our motion would cover that.
Okay.
And we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Call the roll. Ready for the roll?
Badger,
Yes.
Baldwin.
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Bont,
Yes.
Lachey,
Yes.
and Mariner.
Yes.
Okay. New business, election of officers. Our bylaws say that we are to elect new chair and vice chairs at the first meeting in January. This is it. I just take this time to say Steve has been a wonderful leader since I've been here and does a great job of corralling this, and I look forward to him continuing. And I'd like to nominate him as to be the chair if we can get a second.
I'll second that.
And then we go right to a vote. He's not here, but is there, and he doesn't need to be here to accept it. He said he would be okay in that role.
But he does have to be here to defend
He does
himself.
it, that's right. Voice or?
I am fine with it.
There-
I accept it.
Roll or voice? Roll call or?
I think we can do a voice vote,
Voice,
to be honest.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent, done.
With God.
So we are also going to redo what we did last month because it's our bylaws to do it in January, so we need a nomination for a vice chair at this time.
I make a motion to nominate Mr. Badrak as vice chair.
Support?
And I will accept as well, so. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We've completed that task, so and that's good for, I think the bylaw said for the year until there's a vacancy, or is it 2 years?
2 years.
2 years and until there's a vacancy.
Yeah.
Nice.
Communications, I have none. I know you have a comment you wanted to bring up about the.
Yeah, we have the ordinances online are updated, which is good. I know everyone's excited about that. And so I do want to, obviously, some people are interested in getting a paper copy, some people aren't. So if you guys just want to email me with exactly what you want, whether you want a new copy of the zoning ordinance, whether you want all of the ordinances, you know, the full code, it's like 400 pages, whatever you want, I'm happy to print it off for you if you want it printed, so just drop me an email. I will say as well, a little process that we're going to implement is that when we have an unpublished ordinance, we essentially have set up a page for unpublished ordinances, and throughout the year, we're going to upload the ordinances that are not in the updated code. And so it's going to start with what we approved at last month's meeting, which was the waterfront preservation district amendment to no longer allow first floor apartments as a approved use. So that's going to be sitting in the unpublished ordinances section. Every year when we update the code and we get a fresh code of ordinances, that page will become blank and then we'll start again. And so there'll be a detailed list of everything that you need to know along with the code.
And that's available through the city website. You can get to those items. And
It is. I know that you'd like me to quickly show.
tutorial for
Yeah,
those
I'm
watching.
happy to do that if you'd like. Can I borrow your computer, sir?
Is the annual publication just a decision we've made, or is that what American Legal Publishing does for us, or like, why is it once a year?
I'm actually not sure. It's possible that it's a budgetary reason. It obviously costs money to do that. If that's something that you want to look at, obviously that's something we can look at, but.
I'd be interested in knowing the cost, that's all, because I have looked up the code on my own, not going through the city website. You type in
Sure.
Saugatuck Code of Ordinances and it takes you there, and then you pull it up and it's out of date, so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as of right this second, it's in date.
Right.
But yeah, I understand why that would be a little concerning. But obviously, so this is just to give you a quick overview, so this is the website. If you go to About, we have the city charter. Underneath About, you also have ordinances. Either one of them are going to take you to the American Legal Publishing section. Specifically, if you wanted to look at, say, the dimensional requirements for a certain district, you would go to the zoning code, and then you could go to zoning districts and district regulations, and then you could look at our requirements. If you didn't know that this was all here, obviously it's online. So here's the community residential district requirements, and yeah, this is where it all lives. So.
Show us the unpublished.
Sure thing. Unpublished right now is if we go back and go to departments. About again. We have, oh, I'm sorry. There it is, okay. No, I'm sorry. Hold on. My apologies, I think it's been removed. It was
Okay.
Essentially, there was a little arrow here and it dropped out the unpublished ordinances
Okay,
section.
so- But it'll be right there for the public and for us
it's-
that want to look at it.
Yeah, we'll make it easy to see.
Okay.
So.
Good deal. Thank you. Zoning administrator activity reports. Any commentary you'd like to add? It's in the packets, review it. It's
In the packet is cases and closed cases and just the funny little stuff that I include or that I do. And also, because this is our first meeting of the year, I included the 2024 activity report, which I believe Steve will need to present to City Council at the meeting, the regular meeting on the 27th. If he's not back in the country, or back in Michigan, however, because I'm not sure his schedule, we may need to nominate, I don't know, say the
we have-
vice chair, for example.
Our city council representative, I'm sure, can do a fine job. And we'll get some of those typo dates squared away on it for you.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Last public comment, item 9. Is there this opportunity for public comment and anything? If you want to come up to the podium, have 3 minutes to speak on any planning commission item or anything you'd like to talk about. Nobody in the room? Steve's hand is up.
Hey, guys, I think it was a great meeting. A lot of good points were brought up. Again, I apologize, I couldn't be there, but I'm very happy with the way it turned out. And I want to thank everyone for the confidence in re-electing me as chair. I look forward to working with CJ moving forward as vice chair. I look forward to seeing everybody next month for our planning commission meeting. Thank you.
No, really more friends.
Or nobody else online? Commissioner comments. We'll start with the new guy. Welcome to our group, Craig.
Sure. No, honored to be part of this group. I really think it's a great group. I've seen you guys work. I've seen the stuff you've done. You've done some really hard things under a lot of criticism. And I think you've handled yourselves in a way that I hope to live up to that standard. So I am happy and honored to be here and look forward to getting to work.
Welcome.
Couple things real quick. I am so excited that A, the ordinance has been updated, and B, for the first time ever, there is a separate section that people can go to, including myself, and say, okay, here's the wording of ordinances that have been adopted since it was last globally. I mean, that's a first for our city, and I think that's really great. And thank you. The other thing is, real quick, there are now 3 attorneys on this body. There was apparently a comment made at the city council meeting that either disparaged attorneys or thought that 3 was too many or something along those lines. And I will just say that there is much more to being an attorney than actually practicing law. I'm not sure why somebody's smirking at what I'm saying, but that's fine. It's kind of goes along with my point. There's a training that law school gives you to analyze problems, to identify problems, analyze them, look at your best solutions, look at worst case, bad scenarios, all of those kind of things. There's a training process that a lot of people go through that has nothing to do with practice of law. And additionally, it seems to me that being an attorney is an easy opportunity for people to kick somebody for being a lawyer. There are lawyer jokes. When I interviewed first time for being on the planning commission, the mayor at the time during that interview took an opportunity to disparage my occupation. So, with that said, I am proud to be an attorney. I am personally glad there are 3 attorneys on this committee. I don't think we need 3. I don't know that we need any in order for this body to operate efficiently and productively. But for anybody to say that, say otherwise, I think is just unfortunate.
Joe. I want to welcome Commissioner Baldwin. I think you'll make a great addition to the Planning Commission, and we're lucky to have him. Thank you for your service. I also just want to say I'm pleased that we got the ADU special land use standards amended to make it reasonable for the people, the existing residents that already have ADUs in place. I think it was a smart thing to do, and I want to thank everyone here on the commission for helping get that through, and look forward to getting the bed and breakfast closed out as well, hopefully in our next meeting, but thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, welcome Commissioner Baldwin. It's great to have you. Same thing, happy that we got that done. I'd still, going forward, I'd like to keep on looking at the ADUs. And again, I think that if someone is a full-time resident here and they want to be able to rent out a structure on their property, we should make that as easy as possible for them. And yeah, I look forward to going after and getting this bed and breakfast thing resolved. But I do just want to keep in mind that there's a reason that bed and breakfasts are permitted and not motor courts and not inns. So we just need to keep that in mind. We know when we can really see what the text says to make sure we're not opening up the possibility to have these de facto inns operating in a spot where they're not supposed to be. But other than that, I think it's good, and hopefully we can move forward with it.
Welcome, Craig. And I think, Austin, to your last point, I think that we have demonstrated due diligence in terms of these kinds of decisions that we've had to make, and we'll continue to do that. But I really appreciate your really meaningful observations, and sort of because you bring a different point of view than some of us bring. So I really appreciate that. So thank you. And Mark, I didn't hear the comment apparently I didn't go to the last council meeting. But I am sorry about that because, we all add value, and I have found that attorneys in my life have always added a lot of value, and I appreciate that. So, but, and I actually think that, I applaud whoever is thinking about the makeup of at least this commission, because I think we're really balanced in terms of the various experiences that we bring to add a lot of value to the decisions that we make on behalf of the city. So, but I'm glad you're back. How was the seventh continent?
Incredible, indescribable.
So
Thank
we
you.
missed you, but happy you're back.
That's sweet of you. Thank you.
So I'll make my comments. Again, welcome, Craig. Thank you. I'd like to, our thoughts are with the people of California with that disaster that's going on. It's a horrible, horrible thing. It makes us understand what our resources, how fragile they could be. To the mix of our group, we've lost 2 women recently, so you're down to the only one. So I think there's a good desire to watch that mix and make sure we keep a good set of views. And as far as the lawyers, they do a lot better job of reading some of these ordinances than I do as an engineer. So I appreciate that. I'm good at math. You guys do the English cover pretty good. So those are my comments. And Steve, you got to come back. I don't need to do this too many times.
Good job.
You did good.
Thanks. So I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Those that agree, say aye.
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 Yay.